Hey boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed reading Hairpocalypse yesterday. We're going to go over some of those questions just like we normally do during our shared reading time. And then we're going to talk about your assignment for today, which is Tuesday, March 24th. So looking at Hairpocalypse, first off, I want to talk about that title, Hairpocalypse. What word does that maybe remind you of? So I think of the word an apocalypse, which can mean like the end of the world or a tragedy, something terrible happening. And so when we look at Hairpocalypse, that may help me to know, looking at the picture, that this character here might be having a major problem with his hair based on that illustration. So as we're reading the first pages, let's just scroll down. We were paying special attention to our characters and the illustrations. So when we looked at that first page, we're introduced to Aiden Allen. It said he was a grubby kid. So I want to pay special attention to that word grubby. We're going to use context clues to figure out what that word grubby means. So it says his clothes were always wrinkled, his shoes were always untied, and he always seemed to have grass stains on his knees. But none of that was the problem. So I can kind of infer that grubby means he's a little bit of a mess. I see that everything around him is messy. I see his grass stains on his pants, his shoes are untied, his environment around him just kind of looks like a mess. So I'm thinking that that word grubby just means like he's kind of in a mess, kind of not well kept. But we know that that says here that none of that is his problem. So we know that the next page is probably going to introduce the problem that Aiden Allen is really having. I also know that this is the beginning of the story because I'm introduced to the character. Character traits are used to describe that character, and that problem is going to get introduced. So let's go on to page 2. We learn that that real problem is Aiden's hair. It's completely out of control. It says that his hair, he asks, why can't you behave? And so let's look at that picture there. We can look at that illustration and see the look on Aiden's face. And we know, looking at that illustration, that he's frustrated by his hair. It says his hair seemed to move and shrug. It had a mind of its own. It was completely out of his control. And so we know he's kind of frustrated by it looking at that illustration. So now we have 2 pages that we've looked at. We understand that Aiden is grubby by that illustration. It shows us in the picture. We know his hair is out of control. So when we're looking at our questions for Monday, we were asked, how did the illustrations contribute to our understanding of the characters on each page? Well, if you're answering from the first page, we should have said something about how we know he's grubby, that he's messy, that he has grass stains on his pants, and that his shoes are untied. And then looking at that second page, we know that Aiden is frustrated with his hair. You can tell by the look on his face. Let's look at the other characters as we read on. So we continue to look at those illustrations to see how irritated he is. He's struggling to get that hairbrush through his hair. The text supports that because it says he pulls out his mom's big blue brush, but it became tangled in his greasy locks. It says his hair seemed to be grabbing the brush. So it was like his hair was going on and grabbing the brush and pulling it. And so his hair spun the brush in a circle, and then it said it flung the brush into the toilet. So it's almost like he is giving character traits to his hair in itself. He's saying that the hair is doing all these things. This is not good. So again, those illustrations help us to see how frustrated Aiden is with his hair. So he is definitely having a hairpocalypse because his hair is kind of the end of the world. Then when we read on page 7 and 8, we're introduced to his dad. So that illustration kind of helps us to understand how his dad is feeling. His dad looks frustrated. Also, kind of like, why don't you do anything with your hair? And that's supported in the text because he says that he shook his head in dismay. Dismay means like disbelief, like he can't believe that Aiden hasn't done anything with his hair. But Aiden is just as frustrated because he's like, there's just no time. I've tried. It's got a mind of their own. There's just no time. Then his dad asked him to do something with his hair. It says on this page, I thought this was interesting because at first when I looked at the picture, I thought, well, Aiden must have done something to his hair as dad requests. But it said on the bus, Aiden's hair tied itself into 3 bows. So that's inferring that, or saying that Aiden didn't do it, but that it just has a mind of its own and it did it himself. We can look at the illustrations on this page to see how the other characters are reacting. So never in the text does it say they're making fun of him. It does say that Aiden knows everyone is staring at him, but look at their faces. We have one laughing, we have one with his eyes bugged out in disbelief. This girl here is snickering with her hand over her mouth, and we can see that Aiden just feels completely frustrated and upset because his characters are totally making fun of him and his hair. So that's why he's got that big problem with his hair. Moving on. So let's look at our questions we had. So we've kind of talked about each page for number 1 and how each page so far contributed to our understanding of the characters. We talked about Dad being frustrated because we want Dad wants him to do something with his hair. We talked about how Aiden's frustrated because he doesn't know how to do anything with his hair because he says it has a mind of its own. We talked about how the other characters, the other students on the bus, are making fun of Aiden. So his problem in the story would be that his hair has a mind of its own. His hair does not do what it needs to do. And then look at number 3. How do the illustrations help contribute to our understanding of the characters' feelings on these pages? Well, we've talked about that kind of along with number 1. We can see that Aiden feels very upset and frustrated. We can see the other characters think it's funny. And so why did the illustrator include the detail of the boy brushing his hair? Well, let's go back to that detail. So I'm thinking the reason why the author included that detail is because, again, it's not that Aiden is brushing the hair. It says his hair seemed to grab the brush. So it's wanting us to know that Aiden thinks his hair is completely out of his control, that the hair itself has a mind of its own and that he cannot do anything with it because the hair is grabbing the brush. The hair is throwing the brush, flinging it into the toilet. And so I think the author included that just so we understand, number 1, that Aiden feels frustrated, but also number 2, that he can't help it. He can't help what's happening with his hair. Okay, so now that is our reading questions. We've kind of gone over them. So I'd like you to look over what you answered and ask yourself, did you answer those questions correctly? You know, I looked over a couple of responses and they were looking pretty good. So remember, when we answer a question, we use wrap. So we should restate our question, we should answer our question, and we should prove it with text evidence. So when we're proving with text evidence, that should be 3 details from the text. So we want to work on making sure we have complete responses, just like we do in class. So if you have any more details to add, you might want to think about that before we start our graded lessons next week, okay? Making sure you have all those details. I want to pop over here to our writing lesson as well. I asked you to read a book independently and to then write either about what you love about the book, what surprised you, or your favorite part of the book. And so we have worked really hard to grow ourselves as writers. So we want to make sure that when we're writing, we have capital letters, we have correct spelling and punctuation, that we don't have misspelled words, that we use the title to make sure we spell the title correctly. And we should definitely be able to support our responses with at least 3 details. So those are just a few reminders and takeaways from those of you that submitted Monday's reading lesson. You will continue to read Hairpocalypse for Tuesday. Let me quickly pull up the questions there, and I will email those out as well. But so we're looking back at Hairpocalypse again. Excuse me while I'm finding it. Tuesday. There we go. Let's look at those questions for today. So you're going to go back to Hairpocalypse and you have a part A, part B question. What does Aiden realize on page 17 and 18? And how does that change his feelings? So please make sure you answer both parts of those questions. For number 2, what words and illustrations help us understand your answer to number 1? So what words help you understand what Aiden realizes, and what do the pictures do to help you understand what he realizes and how that changes his feelings? So this is answering the question up here. This is focusing on specific words and illustrations. So please make sure that when you're answering the 1 and 2 that you use details from the text to support your answer. Number 3, part A, is a multiple choice question. How does Aiden feel about his hair on page 18? And part B, you need to give specific evidence from the text to support that. Please make sure that you do 30 minutes on iReady reading today. And then for your writing, you're going to write a journal entry about what's happening in your life today. You can tell what you enjoyed doing today, or maybe yesterday if you didn't do much fun today, or something you're thankful for in your life. Again, please use periods, capital letters, correct spelling, and punctuation. Please make sure that you give plenty of details and use your very best writing skills. I miss you, boys and girls. I'll create another video to go over this tonight, and I will email this for your parents. Again, you can print it out, write on it, and then send me a picture and upload it on Edsby. If Edsby is not working, because I don't think it has been working, then you can just write your answers in a notebook, emailing me a picture, or if you want to type directly on that, you can save it. Whatever works for you guys and is best to make sure that you are able to access this cool text. All right, friends, good talking to you, and I will be creating another video soon. Hopefully we can Zoom call very soon. Miss you, and take care. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.